Hey everyone, and welcome to Playworms. The movie starts with a scene that's hard to shake off. We're in a messy bedroom where a young girl stumbles upon her mother's lifeless body after an overdose. It's haunting, raw, and immediately sets the tone for what's coming. Now, fast forward to the present day. We meet our protagonist, Rose Cotter. She's a therapist, just going about her usual day at work. Her first patient is a man named Carl, who's having a full-blown episode. He's muttering about death, his own death specifically, and no matter how much Rose tries to comfort him, you can just feel the unease creeping in. And then things take a wild turn. Rose gets called in to meet a young woman named Laura Weaver. She swears she's being followed by some kind of evil presence. She describes it as something that looks like people but isn't. Creepy, right? This is where things get downright disturbing. 1 second, Laura's panicking. The next, she stops, stares at Rose, and bam! She's wearing this creepy, unsettling smile. Before anyone can figure out what's happening, Laura grabs a shard of broken glass and slashes her own throat. Rose is just frozen. Honestly, who wouldn't be? All right, so here's where things start spiraling even more. She speaks with 2 detectives about the incident, one of whom just so happens to be her ex-boyfriend. Later, Rose heads home to the life she shares with her fiancé Trevor and their adorable cat. They seem to have a solid life together, but you can already feel the cracks forming. And speaking of cracks, Rose and Trevor go to dinner with her sister Holly and her husband Greg. Family dinners are never simple, right? Rose tries to move on. She goes back to work trying to focus and even gets a call from Holly. When Rose passes by her patient Carl's room, he's sitting there with the same unsettling smile Laura had. He stares at her and keeps repeating, "You're gonna die." Cue the goosebumps. Yes, Rose panics and calls for help as Carl gets restrained. She heads out to buy a gift for her nephew Jackson's birthday. Rose can't find her cat Mustache anywhere. And then out of nowhere, the security alarm goes off. She gets a call from the security company, but, plot twist, it's not the real company. It's that malicious entity messing with her, taunting her through the phone. So now it's the weekend, and Rose decides to push through and attend Jackson's birthday party. She brings along her gift, a toy train. But when Jackson opens the gift in front of everyone, it's not a toy train, it's Mustache. Yeah, her cat's dead body is inside the box. Everyone loses their minds. Rose tries to convince them she didn't do it, but nobody believes her. Rose stumbles back, falls straight through a glass table, and ends up badly injured. After that whole nightmare, Rose ends up in the hospital, and it's clear things are spiraling out of control. When Trevor takes her home, she tries to explain everything, but he's not having it. He's convinced Rose has completely lost it, and even accuses her of killing Mustache. At this point, Rose decides to see her own therapist, Dr. Madeline Northcott. Dr. Northcott knows Rose's history. She's the one who helped her through the trauma of her mother's suicide. She starts investigating and listens to the audio from her session with Laura. Rose doesn't stop there. She looks into Laura's professor, Gabriel Munez, who also died under bizarre circumstances. She tracks down his widow, Victoria, to get some answers. Victoria explains that Gabriel was haunted by horrifying visions just days after witnessing another woman, Anna Powell, commit suicide. But when Rose tells Victoria that the same thing is happening to her, Victoria doesn't take it well. She thinks Rose is mocking her loss and kicks her out. With no other options, Rose turns to her ex Joel for help. He's reluctant at first, but he agrees to dig into Anna Powell's case. And what he finds? Terrifying. Anna died by gouging her own eyes out, but the horror doesn't stop there. Anna had also witnessed another man's suicide, caught on security footage from a gas station. In the footage, the man is smiling that same sinister smile before impaling himself in front of Anna. It's chilling. The pattern becomes clear. This entity passes from one victim to another, using trauma and death as its weapon. Back at home, Rose finds that Trevor has called in her therapist, Dr. Madeline, for an emergency house call. Trevor claims he's worried about her, but Rose isn't buying it. She snaps, accusing him of being more concerned about how she makes him look. Frustrated and betrayed, Rose storms out, officially ending their relationship. With nowhere else to turn, Rose visits her sister Holly, hoping to make amends after the disastrous birthday party. But things don't go as planned. Holly refuses to forgive Rose, accusing her of spiraling just like their mother did. That hits a nerve. Rose fires back, reminding Holly that she abandoned their mother, leaving Rose to shoulder the burden alone. The tension is brutal. Rose storms out, but as she gets to her car, she sees Holly walking back toward her. Except, it's not Holly. It's the entity still tormenting her. With the walls closing in, Rose and Joel take a desperate step. They visit a prison to meet Robert Talley. He's the only person who's survived this curse. Robert explains how the entity works. It feeds on trauma, passing itself from one victim to the next after a horrifying public suicide. The only way he escaped? By breaking the chain. How? He killed someone, forcing the entity to move on without taking him. But when Rose admits she can't bring herself to kill anyone, Robert freaks out. He becomes convinced she's brought the entity to him, sending him into a panic so intense that guards have to restrain him. Rose goes back home, shaken. She tries talking to her therapist, Madeline, who somehow shows up at her house. But something's off. As the conversation unfolds, it becomes clear this isn't Madeline at all. It's the entity, taking her form. And, just as things get unsettling, Rose gets a real call from Madeline. The entity, still grinning, looks her dead in the eye and says, "Your time is coming." At this point, Rose is running out of options. She grabs a knife and drives to her workplace, ready to do something unthinkable. She heads straight to Carl's room and begins provoking him, pushing him into a full meltdown. Dr. Morgan rushes in, only to find Rose stabbing Carl again and again. But wait, this can't be real. Can it? It's not. Rose wakes up in her car, gasping for air. The whole thing, a horrifying nightmare. But as she catches her breath, she realizes Morgan has spotted her sitting in her car with the knife. It's another moment that leaves you wondering just how far gone Rose really is. She calls Joel and tells him she needs to isolate herself, cutting off any chance of spreading the entity. She drives to the one place she thinks she can face this nightmare alone, her childhood home, the place where her mother died. But the entity isn't just a memory. It follows Rose, taunting her relentlessly until she takes matters into her own hands. She sets it on fire, watching as the flames consume it. Believing she's finally free, she leaves the house and goes to Joel's apartment. At first, everything seems fine. She tells Joel she did it. She defeated the entity. But then Joel's demeanor changes. He looks at her with a sinister calm, and before she knows it, he flashes that same terrifying smile. And then she wakes up. It was all a dream. Rose is still at the house, alone. The entity, now more horrifying than ever, reveals its true form. It rips off its own face, stretches Rose's jaw wide open, and climbs inside her. Joel, worried for Rose, arrives at the house, but what he finds is worse than anything he could have imagined. Rose is standing there, drenched in kerosene. She turns to face him, wearing the entity's chilling grin. Before Joel can do anything, Rose lights herself on fire, leaving him helpless as he watches her burn. Here ends our recap video. Considering sharing our video and subscribe to our channel.